The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so tense. Representatives from 200 species filled the floating platforms that circled the massive room. At the center stood Ambassador Hyun Lee, a human woman with steel in her eyes and grief carved into the lines of her face. Across from her, the Vraxan Supreme Chancellor Krelvax spread his forearms wide in what his species considered a gesture of peace. His scales gleamed purple under the chamber lights and his voice boomed through the translation system. "We offer generous terms," Krelvax announced. "The humans may keep 60% of their colonies. In exchange, they provide us with their advanced technology and mining rights to 3 systems. This is more than fair compensation for the unfortunate incident." Ambassador Lee stood perfectly still. The unfortunate incident had killed 2.3 million humans. Men, women, children, elderly. The Vraxans had bombed civilian cities from orbit without warning. They had targeted schools and hospitals. They had laughed while doing it, according to the few survivors. Council mediator Thonril clicked his mandibles together nervously. The insectoid diplomat had mediated thousands of conflicts in his long career. He had always found compromise, always found the middle ground. He looked at Ambassador Lee with what his species expressed as hope. "Ambassador Lee," Thonril said gently, "the Council urges acceptance. Further conflict serves no one. The Vraxan Empire has agreed to compensate the families of those lost. War will only create more death." The chamber fell silent. Every species waited for the human response. Many had already drafted trade sanctions against humanity. The humans were being unreasonable, they whispered. The humans were too violent, too stubborn, too proud. They needed to learn how civilized species solved problems. Ambassador Lee finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through every translator in the room. "No." Krelvax's scales rippled with confusion. "No, you refuse our generous offer?" "We don't negotiate with murderers," Lee said clearly. "We eliminate them." The chamber exploded with shocked voices. Thunril's antennae drooped. "Ambassador, please reconsider. Think of your people. Think of the economic consequences. Think of the lives that continued war will cost." Lee turned to face the full council. "6 months ago, my daughter was teaching at a school on Harmony Station. She was 26 years old. She loved children. She wanted to help build a future for humanity among the stars." Lee's voice remained steady despite the pain in her words. "The Vraxans destroyed that station without warning, without provocation, without mercy. My daughter died trying to shield her students from the flames." She paused, letting that sink in. "The Vraxans offer us 60% of what already belongs to us. They offer money for our murdered families. They offer peace in exchange for rewarding their aggression." Lee shook her head. "Humanity has learned this lesson before. When you compromise with those who commit atrocities, you don't get peace. You get time for them to prepare the next attack." An elderly ambassador from the Delphian Collective spoke up. His species was known for their philosophy of universal harmony. "But, Ambassador, surely you see that more violence only creates a cycle of revenge. Your human history is full of such cycles. Have you learned nothing?" "We've learned everything," Lee responded. "We've learned what happens when good people try to negotiate with evil. We've learned what happens when civilized societies think talking can stop those who only understand force. We've learned that some threats must be destroyed, not managed." Krelvax laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. "The human speaks of evil while threatening genocide against our people. The Council sees your hypocrisy, Ambassador." "We're not threatening genocide," Lee corrected coldly. "We're promising justice." "There's a difference. We will dismantle your military. We will occupy your worlds. We will ensure you can never threaten anyone again. But we won't murder your civilians. We won't bomb your children. We're not you." Thonril tried again. "The Council must warn you, Ambassador. If humanity continues this aggressive campaign, we will have no choice but to impose sanctions. Trade restrictions, travel bans, economic isolation. Your people will suffer greatly." Lee smiled without humor. "Then we'll suffer. Humanity survived worse. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived world wars and nuclear threats. We'll survive your sanctions. The question is whether you'll survive the precedent you're setting today." "What precedent?" another council member asked. "That aggression pays," Lee said. "That if you're strong enough, you can murder millions and the Council will help you negotiate a favorable peace. That violence is just an opening position in a bargaining session." She looked directly at Krelvax. "How many species are watching this today and learning that lesson?" The chamber grew uncomfortable. Several ambassadors shifted in their seats. Aboard the flagship Retribution, Captain Jiho Park watched the council session on his display. He was a young man for such a command, only 38, but the war had aged him. He had lost friends on Harmony Station, too. Orders confirmed, Captain, his communications officer reported. Continue the offensive. No matter what the council decides, Jiho nodded. Helm set course for the Vraxan border systems. All ships battle stations. He opened a channel to his fleet. 23 ships, all that remained of Earth's deep space navy after the Vraxan attack. This is Captain Park. I know you all heard the council session. I know what they're threatening, but I also know what the Vraxans did to our people. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Command has given us the green light. We're going in. Anyone who wants to refuse this order and avoid the council sanctions, you have that right. No judgment, no consequences. But understand this. If we stop now, if we accept their terms, we tell the galaxy that human lives are negotiable. We tell every aggressor out there that we're willing to meet them halfway after they murder our families. The silence stretched for 3 seconds. Then his tactical officer spoke up. Sir, all ships report ready for action. No one's backing down. Jiho felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Thank you. All of you. He turned to his navigator. Take us in. Back in the council chamber, Thonril was making one final attempt. Ambassador Lee, I beg you to reconsider. The path you choose leads only to darkness. Lee gathered her documents. Mediator Thonril, with respect, I don't need lectures from species who have forgotten what darkness truly looks like. You've lived in peace so long you think it's the natural state of the universe. It's not. Peace is maintained by those willing to fight for it. She walked toward the exit, then paused and turned back. The Vraxans murdered our children, and you asked us what we'd give them to stop. Humanity's answer is nothing. We give murderers nothing but justice. Consider yourselves warned. The next species that attacks human civilians won't get negotiations. They'll get what the Vraxans are about to receive. Ambassador Hyunlee left the chamber. Behind her, 200 species buzzed with shock and fear and anger. They called humans barbaric. They called humans dangerous. They called humans unreasonable. But not one of them called humans wrong. The sanctions hit Earth harder than anyone wanted to admit. Within 2 weeks, 47 species had cut all trade relations with humanity. Food shipments stopped. Medical supplies dried up. The advanced materials needed for ship repairs became impossible to find. On Earth, Dr. Sunho Kang stood before the emergency session of the unified government. He was an old man, a historian who had studied human conflicts for 50 years. His hands shook slightly as he held his notes, but his voice remained strong. Members of the government, citizens of Earth, he began. Many of you are afraid. Many of you are angry. You see empty store shelves and wonder if we made the right choice. You hear your children ask why their friends from other planets can't visit anymore. You question whether our principles are worth this price. Sunho adjusted his glasses. Let me tell you a story from Earth's history. In the 1930s, a nation began invading its neighbors. The civilized world tried negotiation. They tried compromise. They gave that nation land hoping it would be satisfied. They called it peace. But it wasn't peace. It was just time for the aggressor to grow stronger. He paused, letting his words sink in. By the time the civilized world finally fought back, 50 million people had died. 50 million. Because good people believed that evil could be reasoned with. Because they thought any peace was better than war. They were wrong. And millions paid the price for that mistake. Sunho looked directly into the cameras broadcasting his speech across Earth and to the few remaining Allied colonies. The Vraxans murdered 2.3 million of our people. The Council asked what we would give them to stop. If we had said yes, if we had compromised, we would have taught the entire galaxy a simple lesson. Kill enough humans and they'll pay you for it. How many more millions would die in 5 years? 10 years? When the Vraxans decided they wanted more, deep in Vraxan territory, Commander Daeun Kim led her ground forces through the smoking ruins of a labor camp. They had expected military resistance. What they found was worse. The camp held prisoners from 6 different species, aliens who had been captured during Vraxan raids over the past decade. The conditions were horrific. Many prisoners were sick. All were starving. And in the commander's office, Daeun found the execution schedules. Commander, you need to see this, her lieutenant called out. He had pulled up files from the camp database. These prisoners were supposed to be executed 3 days ago. What stopped it? Dayun asked. According to the logs, they were saving them as bargaining chips. For the peace negotiations, the lieutenant looked sick. They planned to offer their release as proof of Vraxan mercy, then execute them quietly once the deal was signed. Dayun felt rage burn cold in her chest. She opened a channel to the freed prisoners, using the translation system. You're safe now. We're evacuating you to medical facilities. You're going home. An elderly alien from the Quillic species looked at her with confusion in his 6 eyes. But why? Our government voted to sanction your people. They said you were the aggressors. They said negotiations would free us. Dayun knelt down to his level. Your government was wrong, and we don't abandon innocents because their leaders made bad choices. That's not who we are. Across the galaxy, war correspondent Youngmi Han was broadcasting from the Liberation site. Her camera crew captured everything. The freed prisoners, the execution schedules, the evidence of torture, and most importantly, the confusion on alien faces when humans showed them mercy. This is Youngmi Han reporting from the former Vraxan labor camp designation 774, she said into the camera. What you're seeing now is what the Galactic Council's peace negotiations would have produced. These people would have died. The Council would have called it compromise. Humanity calls it what it is: murder. Her broadcast reached 30 billion viewers across the galaxy. For the first time, species that had condemned humanity began to question their position. On the Vraxan homeworld, General Loktar watched the broadcasts with growing concern. He had expected the humans to be brutal conquerors. Instead, they were fighting with precision. They targeted military installations. They avoided civilian casualties. They even provided medical aid to wounded Vraxan soldiers. It was humiliating. It would have been easier if the humans had been monsters. Instead, they were proving themselves better than the Vraxans in every way that mattered. Sir, the human fleet is advancing on 3 fronts, his aide reported. They've taken the Korvax system, the Delrin system, and they're pushing toward our core worlds. Loktar made a decision. If conventional war wouldn't stop the humans, perhaps terror would. Release the biological weapons. Target their forward bases. The aide hesitated. Sir, biological weapons are forbidden by galactic law. If we use them, the humans have already made us outlaws, Loktar snarled. What does it matter now? The biological attack hit 3 human bases simultaneously. It was a weapon the Vraxans had developed in secret, a virus designed to cause agonizing death within hours. The Vraxans expected panic, expected humanity to pull back. Instead, Captain Jiho Park's fleet accelerated their advance. Sir, we have casualties from the bioweapons, his medical officer reported. Estimated 700 dead, another 2,000 infected. Jiho's jaw tightened. Quarantine protocols, full decontamination, and send a message to Earth Command. The Vraxans just escalated. We respond in kind. Sir, we don't have biological weapons. No, Jiho agreed, but we have something better. We have evidence. Transmit everything to the Galactic Council. Every scan of the bioweapon, every casualty report, every piece of data. Let the galaxy see what their peace negotiations were protecting. Youngmi Han received the data an hour later. She didn't hesitate. She broadcast it all. The Vraxan biological weapons, the human casualties. The fact that these weapons had been developed long before the war began. On Earth, families mourned the new casualties. The economic sanctions were getting worse. Power rationing had begun. Food supplies were running low. People were tired. They were afraid. They wanted it to end. Dr. Sunho Kang spoke again, this time from a hospital bed. He had collapsed from stress during his last speech, but he refused to stay silent. I'm old, he told the cameras from his bed. I won't live to see the end of this war, but I'll die knowing we did the right thing. The Vraxans just used biological weapons against our people. They developed those weapons long before we ever fought them. They planned to use them all along. He coughed, and a nurse tried to get him to rest, but he waved her off. The council that condemned us offered to negotiate with these creatures. Think about that. Think about what peace with them would have meant. They would have kept their weapons, kept their ambitions, kept their plans. And in 5 years, or 10, they would have used those weapons on millions instead of hundreds. Back at the labor camp, the freed prisoners were finally healthy enough to travel. As they boarded the human transport ships, many of them were crying. An alien from the Navorian collective approached Commander Daeun Kim. We voted to sanction your people. the alien said softly. Our government said you were warmongers. We believed them. I'm sorry. Daeun placed a hand on the alien's shoulder. You were prisoners. You're not responsible for what your government believes. You're safe now. That's what matters. But why? The alien asked. Why save us when our people hurt yours? Daeun smiled sadly. Because that's the difference between us and the Vraxans. They see everything as leverage. We see people who need help. It's really that simple. As the transport ships carried the freed prisoners away, young Mi-Han ended her broadcast with words that would echo across the galaxy. The Galactic Council offered humanity peace through compromise. Humanity chose war through principle. Today, I watched humans save people whose governments betrayed them. I watched humans show mercy to enemies who showed none. And I finally understand what humanity is teaching the galaxy. Peace without justice isn't peace. It's just delayed suffering. Sometimes the right choice costs everything, but it's still right. 3 months into the war, the Vraxan Empire was growing desperate. They had lost 30% of their territory. Their military was in retreat. And worst of all, the galaxy was starting to ask uncomfortable questions about what the humans had been saying all along. In the intelligence center of the human flagship, Analyst Borisong stared at the data streaming across her screens. She was young, barely 25, but she had a gift for seeing patterns that others missed. And right now she saw something that made her blood run cold. Admiral, we have a problem, she said into the comm. Admiral So Min-yoon arrived within minutes. She was a stern woman who had earned her rank through skill and courage, not politics. What is it? Bora pulled up a star map. The Vraxans have been moving ships away from our front lines. At first I thought they were regrouping, but look at the trajectory. She highlighted the movement patterns. They're heading toward Qualix space. The Qualix voted to sanction us, Soman said slowly. They were some of the loudest voices condemning our war. Yes, ma'am. And I think the Vraxans noticed that. They're emboldened. The galaxy criticized us for fighting back. So now the Vraxans think they can expand in other directions without consequences. Soman swore quietly. How long until they reach Qualix territory? They're already there, ma'am. The attack started an hour ago. On the Qualix homeworld, panic spread through the capital city. The Qualix were a peaceful people. They had no military to speak of, just a small defense force meant for pirates and minor threats. They had lived under the protection of galactic law and the Galactic Council for 300 years. Now Vraxan warships filled their sky, and that protection meant nothing. Benthar, the leader of the Qualix people, sent an emergency transmission to the Galactic Council. His face showed the terror of a man watching his world burn. Council, we beg for your help. The Vraxans are attacking. Our cities are being bombed. Our people are dying. Please send help immediately. Council mediator Thonril appeared on screen within minutes, his antennae drooping with concern. Leader Venthar, we are convening an emergency session. We will establish a mediation committee. We will open negotiations with the Vraxan Empire. These things take time, but... Time? Venthar's voice broke. Our children are dying now. How much time do we have while you talk? Thonril clicked his mandibles nervously. We understand your concern, but the Council's procedures must be followed. In the meantime, we suggest you prepare a list of what territories you would be willing to cede to resolve this conflict peacefully. Venthar stared at the screen in horror. Cede? You want us to give them our worlds for attacking us? It's not about what we want, Thonril explained patiently. It's about finding a realistic solution. The Vraxans clearly have military superiority. Compromise will save more lives than resistance. Trust the Council's experience in these matters. The transmission ended. Venthar looked around at his advisors. They were all thinking the same thing. The humans had been right. The Council's peace was worthless. In orbit above the Qualix homeworld, Vraxan warships prepared for another bombing run. General Loktar smiled as he gave the order. Target their capital city. Maximum destruction. Let's teach the galaxy what happens to those who supported the human sanctions. The Vraxan ships moved into position, their weapons charged, and then Admiral So Min-yoon's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly between them and the planet. This is Admiral So Min-yoon of the Earth Defense Fleet, her transmission. Broadcast on all frequencies. Vraxan vessels, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. You have 30 seconds to comply. Loktar laughed. The humans have no authority here. The Qualix sanctioned you. Why would you defend them? Because it's the right thing to do, Somin replied simply. 25 seconds. You're outnumbered 3-1, Admiral. Then you better hope your ships are as good as you think they are. 15 seconds, Loktar hesitated. The humans had proven themselves dangerous opponents. But retreat would look weak. He made his decision. All ships engage the human fleet. Ignore the planet. Destroy them. The space battle was fierce and brutal. The Vraxans did outnumber the human fleet, but the humans fought with a precision born from months of constant combat. Every shot counted. Every maneuver was calculated. On the planet's surface, Corporal Jinho Nam led his Marines through the capital city. They had dropped in pods during the space battle, a desperate move that left them surrounded by Vraxan ground forces. Sir, we've got civilians trapped in that building. One of his Marines called out. Jinho could see it. A hospital surrounded by Vraxan soldiers. They were using it as a staging ground. Knowing the humans wouldn't bomb a building full of innocents, form up, we're going in. The street-to-street fighting was intense. Jinho's squad was outnumbered, but they had better training and better motivation. They pushed forward building by building, evacuating civilians as they went. A young Qualix child clung to her mother as Jinho carried them both to safety. The mother looked at him with confusion in her large eyes. Why are you helping us? We voted against your people. We called you monsters. Jinho set them down behind the human lines. You were wrong about us. Doesn't mean you deserve to die for it. He checked his weapon. Stay here. We're getting everyone out. In orbit, the space battle was turning in humanity's favor. The Vraxan ships were more numerous, but the human vessels were better commanded. One by one, Vraxan warships fell back or were destroyed. Admiral Somin opened a channel to the Qualix government. Leader Venthar, we're establishing a defensive perimeter. My ground forces are evacuating your citizens from combat zones. You're safe now. Venthar could barely speak. Why, after what we said about you? After we supported the sanctions? Because we don't abandon innocents to murderers, Somin said. That's the difference between us and them. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a battle to finish. The last Vraxan ship jumped away 3 hours later. The Qualix homeworld was saved. The cost had been high. The human fleet had lost 2 ships and taken heavy damage. 73 human soldiers had died in the ground fighting, but not a single Qualix civilian had been killed after the humans arrived. Venthar addressed his people that evening. His voice was broadcast across his world and to the Galactic Council. Today, my people learned a hard truth. We thought peace could be maintained through negotiation alone. We thought those who chose to fight were barbaric. We were wrong. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The humans came to our aid despite our betrayal. They died protecting us despite our condemnation. They asked for nothing in return. They simply said it was right. The Galactic Council offered us negotiations while our children burned. The humans offered us their lives. I know now which species truly understands peace. Within days, 5 more species quietly contacted Earth's government. They didn't announce it publicly, fearing Council reprisal. But they all said the same thing. They wanted human protection. They no longer trusted the Council's mediation. Council mediator Thonril watched this development with growing alarm. For thousands of years, the Council had maintained peace through negotiation and compromise. The humans were destroying that system simply by refusing to compromise with evil. On Earth, Dr. Sunho Kang had recovered enough to give one more speech. He looked older than his years, worn down by the weight of the war. But his message was clear. People ask me if the cost has been worth it. We've lost thousands of our people. Our economy is suffering. We're isolated from much of the galaxy. Was it worth it? He smiled sadly. Ask the Qualix. Ask the species freed from Vraxan labor camps. Ask the 5 species who now seek our protection, because they finally understand what we knew from the beginning. Some evils cannot be negotiated with. They can only be stopped. The cost has been terrible, but the cost of compromise would have been worse. Analyst Bora Song was already looking ahead. She studied the galactic map, tracking movements and communications, and she saw something that worried her. Admiral, we have another pattern developing, she reported. Several species are increasing their military spending. They're watching what's happening. They're learning. Learning what? Admiral Somin asked. That the Council's protection is an illusion. That if you want to be safe, you need to either be strong yourself or ally with someone who is. The galaxy's balance of power is shifting. Somin nodded slowly. Good, let it shift. A galaxy that prepares to defend itself is better than one that thinks talking can stop missiles. On the Qualix homeworld, Corporal Jinho Nam was preparing to ship out with his unit. As he walked through the recovering city, Qualix citizens stopped to thank him. Children brought him flowers. Adults bowed in gratitude. The young Qualix child he had rescued ran up to him with a drawing. It showed a human soldier standing between her family and danger. She didn't speak his language, but the meaning was clear. Jinho knelt down and accepted the drawing carefully. "You're welcome, kid. Stay safe, okay?" As his transport lifted off, he looked back at the city, at the people rebuilding, at the life returning to streets that had been battlefields just days before. The cost had been high, but seeing this made it worth it. The war had reached the Vraxin core systems. After 5 months of fighting, humanity's fleet now surrounded the Vraxin throne world. The planet below held 3 billion Vraxins, including their government and military command. General Taehyun-Oh stood on the bridge of the command carrier Resolution, studying the tactical display. He was a careful man, methodical and patient. He had earned his rank not through bold heroics, but through winning battles with minimal casualties. Now he commanded all human military forces, and the weight of that responsibility never left his shoulders. "Sir, incoming transmission from the planet's surface," his communications officer reported. "It's Supreme Chancellor Krelvax. He's requesting direct contact with you." Taehyun nodded. "Put him through." Krelvax appeared on the screen. The proud Vraxin leader who had offered humanity terms 6 months ago now looked desperate. His scales had lost their shine. His forearms trembled slightly. "General O," Krelvax began, "let us negotiate. Please, we will withdraw from all conquered territories. We will pay reparations. We will disarm our military. Just call off your attack." Taehyun studied the alien leader with cold eyes. "You had that option before you murdered our children. You could have chosen peace then. You chose war instead. This is not negotiation, Chancellor. This is justice. But your own people are suffering," Krelvax pleaded. "The sanctions, the economic costs, the thousands of your soldiers who have died. Was it worth this? We can end it now. Right now. Just agree to terms." "How many other species were you planning to attack after us?" Taehyun asked quietly. Krelvax blinked his 3 eyes in confusion. "What? It's a simple question. After you defeated or negotiated peace with humanity, who was next?" The Supreme Chancellor's silence was answer enough. Taehyun leaned forward. "You see, Chancellor, that's the difference between us. We know exactly who you are. We've learned our lesson about making peace with predators. You'll have your peace, but it will be on our terms, not yours." The transmission ended. Krelvax sat back in his throne room, feeling something he had never experienced before: complete defeat. While the fleet maintained the siege, Captain Eunji Shin and her covert operations team moved through the Vraxin government archives. They had infiltrated the throne world 2 days earlier, a dangerous mission that had cost 3 good soldiers. "Captain, you need to see this," one of her team called out. He had hacked into the central database. "These are planning documents, military projections, target lists." Eunji read through the files, her expression growing darker. They were planning systematic conquest of 32 species, complete genocides of 14 of them, species the Council would have protected through negotiation. "There's more," another team member added. "Look at the timeline. These plans were made 3 years before they attacked humanity. They've been preparing for galactic conquest all along." Eunji encrypted the data and transmitted it to Minister Inwoo Bayek, who was currently on his way to the Galactic Council. They had asked for one final session before the siege concluded. One final chance for humanity to explain itself. Minister Inwoo Bayek was not a soldier. He was a civilian politician, a man who had spent his career building bridges between communities. He believed in dialogue and cooperation, but he also believed in truth, and what he had seen during this war had changed him forever. He entered the council chamber carrying the data Captain Shin had recovered. 200 species watched him with mixed emotions. Some were hostile, some were curious, some, like the Qualix, were supportive. "Honored Council," Inwoo began. 6 months ago, my colleague Ambassador Lee stood here and told you we would not negotiate with murderers. You condemned us. You sanctioned us. You called us barbaric. Today I'm here to show you why we were right." He activated the display, projecting the Vraxin documents for all to see. These are planning documents from the Vraxan military archives. They detail planned attacks on 32 different species. 14 of those species were marked for complete elimination, not conquest, not subjugation, extinction. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Inwu waited for them to quiet before continuing. Look at the dates. These plans were made 3 years ago. Long before the Vraxans attacked humanity, they were building toward galactic conquest. We were just their first target. He pulled up another document. Here's what's interesting. The Vraxans specifically chose their targets based on Council doctrine. They identified species that would rely on negotiation rather than resistance. Species that the Council would protect through mediation rather than force. Council mediator Thonril's antennae were trembling. This cannot be real. The Vraxans agreed to multiple peace conferences. They showed willingness to negotiate. Because negotiation gave them what they wanted, Inwu replied. Every time you mediated a conflict involving the Vraxans, what happened? They gained territory. They gained resources. They gained time to prepare for the next attack. Your peace process was feeding their war machine. An elderly delegate from the Talaran Concord slowly rose to speak. This was Elder Tamora, a being who had observed galactic politics for 800 years. Her species rarely involved themselves in council affairs, preferring to watch and learn. When she spoke, everyone listened. I have witnessed the rise and fall of 17 galactic civilizations, Tamora said in her ancient voice. I have seen empires built on conquest. I have seen confederations built on peace. And I have learned one fundamental truth that the Council seems to have forgotten. She paused, her old eyes sweeping across the chamber. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of justice. When you negotiate with aggressors, when you split the difference between murderer and victim, you do not create peace. You create an environment where aggression is rewarded and innocence is punished. Tamora gestured to the documents on display. The humans understood what we forgot. Some evils cannot be reasoned with. Some threats must be eliminated, not managed. We called them barbaric for refusing to compromise. But look at the result. The Vraxans would have killed billions. The humans stopped them. Which choice was truly barbaric? The chamber fell silent. The weight of Tamora's words, backed by 8 centuries of wisdom, was impossible to ignore. Minister Inwu continued. Half of the species in this chamber are on the Vraxan target list. Your worlds were scheduled for attack within the next decade. The Council's mediation process would not have saved you. It would have given the Vraxans the time they needed to prepare for your conquest. He looked directly at Thonril. You asked humanity to think of the lives that war would cost. We did. We thought about the billions who would die if we compromised. We thought about the children of every species on this list. And we decided their future was worth fighting for, even if it cost us everything. On the throne world below, General Loktar prepared his final defenses. He had listened to the Council broadcast. He had heard his own plans exposed for all to see. Now the galaxy knew the truth. Sir, the human fleet is moving into final position, his aide reported. They're preparing for orbital insertion. Loktar nodded slowly. Order all military personnel to designated positions. Evacuate civilians to the southern continent. Whatever else happens, we don't want them claiming we use civilians as shields. The aide looked surprised. Sir, that's exactly what the humans would expect us to do. Using civilian areas as cover would prove them right about us, Loktar interrupted. I may be a warrior, aide, but I'm not a monster. Not like they think. Evacuate the civilians. As the preparations continued, Loktar found himself thinking about the humans. They had been so predictable in some ways. Always protecting the weak. Always showing mercy when they could. Always fighting with honor even when their enemies did not. It should have been a weakness. Instead, it had made them stronger. Species that initially condemned them now sought their protection. Soldiers who faced them learned to fear their discipline. And the galaxy was being forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Maybe the humans' way was better. Back in the council chamber, the debate raged on. Some species argued that humanity had still acted too aggressively. Others countered that aggression against aggressors was not the same as unprovoked violence. The chamber was dividing along new lines. Elder Tamora spoke again. The council has a choice to make. We can cling to our old ways, pretending that endless negotiation will protect us, or we can learn from what the humans have taught us, that peace must be defended, that justice sometimes requires force, that some lines cannot be crossed without consequences. She looked around the chamber. I propose we dissolve this council. Not in defeat, but in recognition that our methods are no longer sufficient. We need a new system, one that protects the innocent while punishing the guilty, one that the humans would respect. The proposal sent shockwaves through the chamber. Dissolve the Galactic Council. It had existed for 5,000 years. It was the foundation of galactic civilization. But as Minister Inwu watched the debate unfold, he realized something. The foundation had been cracked for a long time. Humanity had just exposed it for all to see. Now the galaxy had to decide what to build in its place. On the resolution, General Tae-hyun-oh received word that civilian evacuations on the throne world were complete. The Vraxan military had actually cooperated. The Vraxan throne world fell after 3 days of careful, methodical assault. General Tae-hyun-oh's forces moved through the capital city with precision, securing government buildings and military installations while avoiding civilian areas. By the time Supreme Chancellor Krelvax was taken into custody, only military personnel had been killed in the fighting. President Kyungmi Lim watched the reports from Earth with mixed feelings. She was a grandmother, a former teacher who had never expected to lead humanity through a war. But when the previous president had died in the initial Vraxan attack, she had stepped up. Now 7 months later, she was presiding over humanity's greatest military victory and facing its greatest diplomatic challenge. Madam President, her aide said quietly, the Galactic Council has officially dissolved. Elder Tamura's proposal passed with 73% support. They're asking to meet with you about establishing a new galactic government. Kyungmi nodded slowly. Tell them I'll attend. But first I want to visit the War Crimes Tribunal. The tribunal had been established on a neutral world, overseen by a coalition of humans and allied species. General Loktar was the first to stand trial, and Ambassador Hyun Lee had insisted on attending. Lee sat in the observation gallery as Loktar was brought in. The Vraxan general looked older somehow, diminished by defeat. When he saw Lee watching, something passed across his reptilian features. Recognition, perhaps, or regret. The prosecution presented evidence of attacks on civilian targets, use of biological weapons, and plans for genocide against multiple species. Loktar did not deny any of it. When asked if he had anything to say in his defense, he stood and faced Ambassador Lee directly. I have no defense, he said. I followed orders. I believed in our cause. I thought we were strong and you were weak. He paused. I was wrong about what strength means. You humans fought us with honor even when we showed none. You protected species that had betrayed you. You showed mercy when you could have shown cruelty. Loktar's scales darkened with what might have been shame. Ambassador Lee, you once asked why we didn't negotiate. The truth is, we never intended to. We saw negotiation as a tool to buy time and extract concessions. We thought species that relied on talking were cowards. He looked around the tribunal. We were wrong. The real cowards are those who attack the defenseless and hide behind negotiations. You humans taught the galaxy that lesson. I just wish we had learned it before millions died. Ambassador Lee spoke for the first time. General, your regret doesn't bring back my daughter. It doesn't bring back any of the people your forces killed. But I hope it teaches others what the Council never could, that actions have consequences, that you can't murder your way to peace. The tribunal would continue for months, but Loktar's testimony set the tone. Other Vraxan officers began to cooperate, providing evidence against their own government. It was as if humanity's example of honor had cracked something in the Vraxan military culture. On the Vraxan throne world, now under human occupation, Captain Jiho Park walked through the rebuilding capital city. He had been promoted to admiral after the successful siege, but he still preferred his old title. It felt more honest somehow. A young Vraxan child approached him cautiously. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old by human standards. She held out a piece of fruit, a traditional Vraxan gesture of peace. Jiho knelt down and accepted it carefully. Thank you. What's your name? The child's translator struggled with her young voice. Kira, are you going to hurt my father? Is your father military? She nodded, eyes wide with fear. If he committed crimes, he'll face trial. But we don't hurt people just because they're Vraxan. We're not here for revenge. We're here to make sure this never happens again. The child looked confused. But my father said humans were monsters who eat children. Jiho smiled sadly. Your father was taught lies so he would be willing to hurt us. We don't eat children. We protect them. All children, even Vraxan ones. He stood up. Go home to your mother. Tell her you're safe. All civilians are safe. As the child ran off, Jiho thought about the long road ahead. It would take years to rehabilitate Vraxan society, to teach them that strength didn't mean cruelty, and that honor wasn't weakness. But if a 6-year-old could learn it, maybe there was hope. In Geneva, Earth, the conference to establish a new galactic government began. President Kyungmi Lim stood before representatives from 83 species, some old council members, some new allies, some former enemies. "We didn't ask for this war," she began. "We didn't want to be the ones who changed galactic civilization. But we will not apologize for defending our people. We will not apologize for refusing to compromise with evil, and we will not let the galaxy fall back into the same patterns that enabled the Vraxans." She pulled up a document on the main display. "This is what I'm calling the Earth Accords. It's a framework for a new alliance built on clear principles. First, member species commit to mutual defense. If one is attacked, all respond. Second, aggressor species face immediate and overwhelming force, not negotiations. Third, all members maintain sufficient military strength to defend themselves." A delegate from one of the old peaceful species objected. "President Lim, this sounds like you're advocating permanent militarization. That's not peace. That's preparing for war." "No," Kyungmi corrected gently. "It's preparing for defense. The old council believed that if everyone refused to fight, there would be no wars. But that only works if everyone agrees. The Vraxans didn't agree. Neither did the species on their conquest list. The galaxy learned that peace maintained through weakness is not peace. It's just waiting for someone stronger to take advantage." Minister In Woo Baek stood to support her. "The Earth Accords don't require species to be aggressive. They require them to be capable. There's a difference. A locked door isn't aggressive. It's prudent. A strong defense isn't warmongering. It's protection." Elder Tamura rose to speak. "I have lived through 17 civilizations. The ones that lasted longest were not the most peaceful. They were the ones most willing to defend their peace. I support the Earth Accords." Over the next 3 days, 40 species signed the accords. It wasn't everyone, but it was a start. Some species, clinging to pure pacifism, refused. Kyungmi respected their choice even if she thought it was a mistake. "The accords are voluntary," she told them. "But understand that if you're attacked, the response will come from accord members, not from endless negotiations. We will protect you because it's right, but we won't pretend your ideology is practical." War correspondent Young Mi Han spent the months after the war creating a comprehensive documentary about the conflict. She had footage from dozens of battles, interviews with soldiers and civilians from multiple species, and evidence from the Vraxan archives. Her documentary, titled "The Species That Wouldn't Yield," premiered simultaneously on Earth and 47 allied worlds. It showed the Vraxan attack that started the war, the Council's demands for compromise, humanity's refusal, the liberation of labor camps, the rescue of the Qualics, the evidence of Vraxan plans for galactic genocide. But it also showed the cost. The human soldiers who died, the families torn apart, the economic hardship of the sanctions, the weight of command decisions. It didn't shy away from the ugliness of war, even necessary war. The documentary ended with Young Mi's final interview, conducted on the Vraxan throne world after its fall. "People ask if it was worth it," she said to the camera. 7,000 human soldiers dead, billions in economic damage, isolation from half the galaxy for months. Was it worth the price? She gestured to the rebuilding city around her. The Vraxans were planning to exterminate 14 species and enslave 20 more. The Council's peace process would have enabled it. Humanity said no. We paid the price so billions wouldn't have to. Was it worth it? Ask the species that are still alive because we fought. Ask the children who won't grow up under Vraxan occupation. Ask the freed prisoners who saw humans show mercy when others showed none. Young Mi looked directly into the camera. Humanity taught the galaxy an old lesson that had been forgotten. That peace without justice is just organized cowardice. That some evils must be stopped, not negotiated with. That the price of standing for what's right is high, but the price of compromise with evil is higher. Yes, it was worth it. It was always worth it. The documentary won awards on 30 planets and sparked debates across the galaxy. But more importantly, it changed how people viewed humanity. Not as warmongers, but as species willing to pay the price for principles. On Earth, Dr. Sunho Kang gave one final lecture before retiring. He was weak now, his body failing after months of stress, but he insisted on speaking one more time. "I'm an old man." he told the students gathered at the university. "I won't live to see what the galaxy becomes, but I can tell you what I hope for. I hope we never have to fight like this again. I hope the Earth Accords prevent the next war before it starts. I hope the galaxy learns that defense prevents more suffering than endless peace talks." He paused to catch his breath. "But if we do have to fight again, I hope humanity remembers these lessons. Never compromise with those who target innocence. Never mistake the unwillingness to fight for moral superiority. And never apologize for defending the defenseless no matter what the cost."